This hour with the race towards 5G technology. Now, there's a new court case that could be the latest sign of the ongoing tension between the United States and a specific company, Huawei. Now, the Chinese telecom giant is taking legal action against United States company Verizon over patent infringements.
Spacewatch, SpaceX blew up a rocket Sunday morning on purpose. The company was testing the in-flight abort system for its Crew Dragon spacecraft. Here's a look starting with the launch.
Liftoff, temper far and high.
The Falcon 9 rocket lifted off from John F. Kennedy Space Center in Florida this morning. About a minute and a half later, engineers intentionally caused the rocket to explode. Now, as part of that test, the Crew Dragon capsule's rescue system separated from the spacecraft. In a real emergency, the astronauts would be in that capsule and would be brought back down to Earth. The capsule splashed down to the Atlantic Ocean about 9 minutes after launch and about 20 miles east of Cape Canaveral. The test was an important milestone for U.S. space travel. It clears the way for the first manned American missions in more than 8 years.
Just to express great appreciation and admiration for the SpaceX and NASA teams that made this happen. Without a lot of dedicated people at SpaceX and NASA, this would not have happened. So it's just thank you for your hard work and dedication to achieving this the success of this mission. There's I think a few points that are kind of exciting to note. That the peak velocity of Dragon during abort was more than double the speed of sound. It went to Mach 2.2. And achieved an altitude of 40 kilometers or 131,000 feet. So I think these are pretty exciting specs, to be for the sport to have gone more than 3 times the altitude of a typical airliner, and to accelerate that rapidly away from a booster. And I think if you saw in the video that the booster actually exploded as expected. So that was very exciting, and it landed in relatively high winds at the ocean level, which I think helps us envelope the mission for when it is crewed, since we expect this to be sort of an enveloping condition for the winds at sea level at the recovery site for when crews are launched. So overall, as far as we can tell thus far, it is a picture-perfect mission. It went as well as one could possibly expect. And again, dedication. This is a reflection of the dedication of the hard work of the SpaceX and NASA teams to achieve this goal. I'm super fired up. This is great. It's really great. And we're looking forward to the next step. And I think we'll talk more about next steps in as we get further into comments.
CBS News senior space consultant Bill Harwood joins me now from the Kennedy Space Center. Bill, how significant was this launch and this whole sequence?
Well, it's really hard to overstate it. One of the key aspects of building a spaceship that's going to carry people is having a way to make sure that if something goes wrong with the launch, they have a way to safely get away from an exploding booster. Everybody has memories of Challenger and other rockets over the years that have, not made it to orbit. And so getting this test out of the way and not just getting it done, but getting it done successfully, which appears to be the case, was a very big step forward for SpaceX and for NASA.
Can you explain to us how this abort system works?
Yeah, it's really slick. The Crew Dragon capsule that SpaceX has designed has 8 engines around the base of it called Super Draco engines. Each one of those produces about 16,000 pounds of thrust, and 2 of them together equals an F-16 fighter jet on full afterburner, if you think about it that way.
Wow.
So the rocket is wired with sensors. The flight computer in the Dragon capsule is always monitoring those systems during a normal launch. And if it sees any signs that something's going awry, temperature gets too high, something changes in the engine output, then it can trigger this abort, which would ignite those 8 Super Draco engines and shoot it away from the rocket safely. And that's exactly what they demonstrated today. They shut down the engines on the Falcon 9's first stage and triggered these abort engines, and that thing really hauled. It accelerated to something like 430 miles an hour in just a couple of seconds. And it subjected the 2 test dummies, I call them astronaut test dummies, there's a fancy name for them, but subjected them to a little more than 3.5 times the normal force of gravity. So, what you feel on a really big roller coaster, kind of a sensation. And then they shut down and parachuted safely down to the ocean, as you said. It really seemed to go off without a hitch.
For years, how in the future we're going to live in a cashless society, right? Well, tonight we ask, when is it really coming? And what's it going to mean? How's it going to affect my life, your life? Good, bad, indifferent?
To answer your first question of is it coming, the short answer is yes. We see the latest example today in Greece. Greeks now must spend at least 30% of their income electronically. And if they don't, then they will face a 22% fine on the shortfall. So let's say you only spend 15%
right.
And not 30, then that remaining 15% will be fined 22%. Now, let's remember that already in Greece, we have any bill under 70 euros must be paid either electronically by a check or by a credit card. So in this instance, using cash is not just taboo and not just financially de-incentivized, but actually illegal. But the truth is, Rick, this is symptomatic of a global trend. We had in India in 2016 the government declaring without warning that the 2 largest denomination bills would actually become invalid. What we're looking at now is some protests that were against this policy, which did, by the way, abolish over 80% of the circulating cash by value. So the owners of this cash could recoup their value by putting them into a bank account after a very short grace period. But the problem, of course, is that half of Indians do not have a bank account. It's a very largely cash-based society. So we had a lot of backlash in India after that was introduced in 2016. But what few know, Rick, is that this policy that was imposed on India actually has its roots in Washington. USAID had negotiated a series of agreements with the Indian Ministry of Finance, and one of these was actually with the goal of phasing out cash. So less than 1 month before Prime Minister Modi announced this policy, USAID actually established a cashless payment partnership with the Indian Ministry of Finance called Catalyst.
Help me understand this from a total rudimentary perspective, because there's a lot of people out here who are watching this right now who are thinking, you know what? I'm okay with not having to use cash. I'm more apt to get robbed. It's so easy to lose it. I like using a credit card everywhere I go. I like this cashless system. Help them understand why they should hold on to the cash system.
Well, let's ask ourselves who benefits from a cashless system. The most obvious instance, is banks, of course, right? Going cashless prevents a banking crisis because traditionally, when negative interest rates become too great, people will withdraw their funds, right, and hold cash. But paper currency is what allows for these bank runs, so that's impossible without cash. So that's the most obvious example, which is why it's significant that the largest U.S. bank, J.P. Morgan Chase, actually has a policy to restrict cash in certain markets, like credit cards, mortgages, homes, these big purchases, right, that it'd be great to have data on. But it also doesn't even allow people to store cash in its safety deposit box. But it's also significant that this idea of a cashless society actually has its origins with the banks themselves. It's significant that Willem Buter, who was the chief economist at Citigroup at the time, actually was the first to present this idea of a cashless society.
Airbnb released a statement recently that had some on Wall Street scratching their heads. It read in part, quote, "In 2018, we publicly declared something we had felt for a long time, that we aspire for Airbnb to be among the first of the true 21st century companies, one that benefits all our stakeholders over the long term. We believe that building an enduringly successful business goes hand in hand with making a positive contribution to society. Increasingly, that is what citizens, consumers, employees, communities, and policymakers desire, even demand. Serving all stakeholders is the best way to build a highly valuable business, and it's the right thing to do for society," end quote. Airbnb's statement went on to describe how its new commitment also includes creating a stakeholder committee on its board of directors and tying bonuses to performance on the company's social goals. John Stahl of the Wall Street Journal recently wrote that this is the equivalent to telling companies' owners they aren't as important as they think. Airbnb isn't alone with this seemingly woke business model. In August last year, the Business Roundtable released its statement on the purpose of a corporation, signed by 181 CEOs, saying that rather than focusing exclusively on profits for shareholders, businesses should create value for all stakeholders, including employees, customers, suppliers, and local communities. This approach has raised new questions and fueled debate about the state of capitalism, its future, and why businesses exist in the first place. Nobel Prize-winning American economist Milton Friedman wrote that there is, quote, one and only one social responsibility of businesses: to use its resources and engage in activities designed to increase profits, so long as it stays within the rules of the game, which is to say, engages in open and free competition without deception or fraud. So, will this new corporate vision, according to the Business Roundtable, for the future success of our companies, our communities, and our country really play out that way? You've probably heard the adage, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Well, in this case, is the road to financial ruin also paved with good intentions?
So I'm just thinking to myself, there's also a move on like cryptocurrency and other types of cash that are less apt for the government to put their hands into.
Right.
That's supposed to be the beauty of cryptocurrency. Apparently it's a big deal in India right now.
Right.
Is that a part of something that would be less apt to make people vulnerable, for example?
Right, well, any sort of digital currency is more susceptible to being tracked, databased, and monitored, right? So you could say, hey, this doesn't affect me. Why should I have a problem with going cashless? That's only not going to be a problem for you if you're not going to do anything that a government might see as a threat. So we know from multiple NSA whistleblowers, right, that NSA surveillance, all of this spying that the state does, is less about terrorism and more about suppressing dissent. This is, something we've covered multiple times in the past. So in a way, having everything more digitized and more, tracked and surveilled allows for increased control. So a lot of people are saying that this momentum towards a cashless society not only benefits the central banks, but it also benefits these government actors who, of course, would love to have, as much data on our lives as possible.
I get it, yeah. It takes the control away from the individual and it gives it right there squarely on the shoulders of a government.
Right, simple surveillance enhancer.
Which is important. Good stuff. Thanks for that.
Scotty. So Huawei is now launching a new attack against Verizon, claiming that the U.S. carrier infringed patents that were held by the Chinese telecom giant. So Huawei is demanding the U.S. carrier pay fees for using 12 patents in its network. The lawsuit filed in a federal district court in Texas claims that Verizon has been using its patents without a proper license. Now Huawei is arguing Verizon should pay the Chinese telecoms giant for its use of its technology. In a press release, Huawei's chief legal officer, Dr. Song Liu Ping, said Verizon's products and services have benefited from patented technology that Huawei developed over many years of research and development. Verizon spokesman, also responding, called the lawsuit a PR stunt and said it's a sneak attack on Verizon and the nation, adding the action lacks merit, and we look forward to vigorously defending our company and our nation. Huawei's real target is not Verizon. It is any country or company that defies it.